All right. It is a couple minutes past the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Well, thank you for joining us today on part three of our three-part series on financial foundations for interior designers. I'm Cale, head of success here at Materio. That means my job is to make sure that everyone using the platform has all the resources that they need, that they are able to contact us and ask any questions that they need, and that everyone can run their projects without any problem. So today we're going to talk about purchasing and order tracking. So the reason why we chose to include purchasing and order tracking in this series is because whenever people come to Materio and we speak on their onboarding calls, everyone typically says that they want to get organized. And the biggest part about getting organized is getting your procurement side of the house under control, knowing what's approved, knowing what's been ordered, knowing what's been received, where it's been received, has it been installed or not? Is there anything else left to do to get it done? So the good thing about Materio is it acts as your mission control center for everything. And so you can submit orders, you can record orders that you place online or in person, you can track their statuses, and then you can use Materio as the communication hub for communicating internally. And then you can also communicate to your client the statuses of everything. And so that they're up to date, they don't have to call you or text you or email you. They know what's going on. And additionally, having this structure allows you to put your workflows on rails. And by that, I mean that everything is moving forward. The project is progressing. You submit the design, you get approval, you get the invoice, by invoice, I mean you build a client, you then order it, and then everything else from there on out is visible to your client. So we're going to talk today a little bit about all of that. First, we're going to do a quick recap of the first two sections that we did, and then we're going to go into the importance of recording orders of material, talk a little bit about the differences between what an expense is and what an order is in Materio. There's a little bit of a difference there. We're going to go into that. We're going to talk about how to do a refund and a return, and we're going to talk about the QBO sync to that way your accounting is in line with what's going on in Materio. And then we're going to just recap and go over best practices and have a little bit of time left over at the end for some Q&A. So on the first section, we talked about pricing and profitability. In a nutshell, revenue minus your expenses is your profitability. And we talked about how important it is to use a dynamic pricing strategy, to use those project level fees, to use your markups to your advantage, and combine those in a way that maximizes profitability. In the second session, we talked about how to create invoices, how to use the correct documents, how to make sure you're getting paid up front with deposits and retainers, how to take that deposit retainer, use it as payment on a future invoice, how to use Materio Pay to get paid for those invoices and those deposits and retainers. And we also touched on the QuickBooks integration on that as well. And so we're just going to jump in here. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. I'm happy to address them as we go, as well as at the end. If you want to hold it to the end, we can dive in a little bit deeper. So the reason that this is such a big thing that we want to talk about is because this is your place to organize everything, and we want to make sure that everything is moving forward and getting done and accomplished. And additionally, we want you to make sure that you know your numbers. If you're not recording these purchases in Materio and you just have them in receipts that are in QuickBooks or in your credit card statement or your bank statement, and they're not consolidated, it's really difficult to know, one, your cash flow, two, how much have you spent on this project versus other projects. 3, how much is left to spend on this project? And then we want to be able to control that cash flow. So maybe we know that there's $20,000 left to spend, but maybe we pull these invoices up and we can get that paid upfront so that we can bankroll our purchases for maybe this project and other projects. And then additionally, you can track billable expenses, reimbursable expenses with Materio. And then one of the greatest things about Materio is that you keep your clients up to date and you can communicate with them through the system. So just to understand a little bit about orders, you might hear the word purchase order and order often. Well, they're pretty similar. The thing about a purchase order is it is the intent to order a product or service, where an order is the official document that says the order has been placed. An order happens whenever an invoice is received. Similar to a receipt, that is the document that signifies that the transaction has taken place. The orders and Materio that you create can have your bill to address. That can be different than maybe your office address or your home address. You can also control the ship to address. That can be any address or any contact in Materio. That can be a workroom, that can be a warehouse, it can be the project site, it can be your office. You can control where the ship to address is designated whenever you do send a purchase order to a vendor. And the two different types of orders in Materio are kind of the analog or older old-fashioned way to do orders, known as like the purchase order method, and then the just tracking your online or in-person orders. Those both funnel through the order system. And this is a little screenshot of that. We're going to look at the system here in a little bit. It'll be a little bit bigger. So you can keep track of your orders that you place and send to your vendors through Materio, and you can track your orders that you place online or in person. And whenever a selection is made in Materio, we actually auto draft those into a draft purchase order so that you can just hit that send button and send to the vendor that you do want to place that order. The orders and purchase orders in Materio do have the ability to input the tracking information so that the shipments can be tracked, and those then go to your timeline, and you can see where everything is on your timeline. And so the difference between an order and an expense is that an expense is something that you didn't forecast for. It wasn't necessarily in the scope of work. It was something that was kind of an afterthought, or you had to get on the fly, so to speak. And we still want to categorize those to something in the scope of work, but we just didn't initially forecast for them. And with these expenses, they can also be known as billable expenses or incidental expenses. You can choose to add a markup to these, or you can not mark them up. If you choose to not mark them up, the client will be able to see the backup so that you'll have some transparency there that you are just passing this cost on to them. You're not marking it up. And that is done whenever you invoice through Materio. And so there's something that we want to make sure that we understand, and that is that within Materio, there are statuses, and there can be statuses on orders, there can be statuses on components, and there can be statuses on items. And so the difference between a component and an item is that an item is a collection of components and is visible to the client, where a component is something that is underneath the surface, so to speak, and not visible to the client. And those individual components can have their own statuses. So for example, if you have provided a selection for a custom pillow to a client, They're just going to see the custom pillow option in which you've curated for them to see of the fabrics and the insert possibly, where underneath the surface there is going to be the front fabric, the back fabric, the lacing on it, the insert, the workroom labor. All of those individual components can have their own statuses. So you can keep track of where everything is individually. And so within each status, there are, or within each of these objects of the orders, items, and components, there are these different statuses. And so orders have auto drafted status. That's whenever something is selected, it's going to go into an auto drafted status. Once you hit save on that auto drafted status, it's going to go into a draft status. You can go directly from an auto draft status to a sent status or needs review or confirmed or fully paid status. So if you click on the staged West Elm purchase order, you can just enter that you went ahead and purchased those items from West Elm online and upload the receipt, and it will go into a confirmed status. If you've paid it, you'll go into a fully paid status. And so again, items can have their own status of ordered, shipped, received, in progress, and complete. Same with components, but again, components are not visible to clients and are independent of the item status. And on our right here, we can see that the top portion of this screenshot is the item status, with the bottom outlined of our component statuses. And so whenever you have an item that has components on it and you click the status, that's the screen that you'll see. You'll see something like that. And so one of the main things that we get a lot of questions about here in our chat is, how do I record a refund or a return or a canceled item? And we built out a workflow for this, and it's pretty easy once you do it once and get the hang of it. And basically, just remember, you don't want to delete anything. We want that record in there of that the item was, if you ordered it, we want to make sure that we keep that order in there. And what we want to do is we're going to reduce the client price to $0 on that item. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add, if you're going to replace that item, we're going to add another item and put its client price as the correct client price. And then an auto drafted purchase order will be populated in the finance area. And when the system recognizes that, you can publish that credit and then use that credit to pay for the new item. And then as far as the client's concerned, and then we have a special section in the expense area where we can record refunds, and you just hit new expense, and then there's this little checkbox in the bottom left that's circled here. It's called refund. And then you can upload the receipt. You can name it that it was a refund for whatever. Then you can tie it to that item so it reduces the amount of money that you spent on that item. And then you'll enter the amount and any sales tax that you paid for it, and then you'll save that. And that way your finances are tied together. And then additionally, these refunds do not sync back to QuickBooks at the moment. So you'll want to let your accountant know that you did receive this refund, or you had a refund, and so that they can take care of that in QuickBooks. And so now that we've replaced an item, we can also do just like maybe an item was canceled. And so again, we want to adjust the item to $0 for the client price. And then we'll go and do the vendor refund. Again, that's in the expense area, and I'll show you here in a minute what that looks like. And then if you've invoiced for that, if you build your client for that, you want to go to new credit, and that item will show a negative amount, and you can pull that negative amount onto the credit and publish that credit so that you can use that credit for a future invoice for that client. If there's not any, if you haven't invoiced for that item, then you're done. You just have recorded it, and there's no further action. Um, if you have invoice for it and there's no future invoices, you're going to need to either cut a check or wire that money back to the client and let your accountant know again, because that would have taken place outside of Materio. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about the QBO syncing. We're not going to get too in depth here, but just talk about it at a high level. So everything, all the orders, purchase orders and expenses sync over to QuickBooks. The language is a little bit different in QuickBooks. QuickBooks uses more of an accounting terminology than we do in Materio, just for like the ease of understanding. And so Materio POs sync over and they create a QuickBooks purchase order. They'll look very similar, where the split happens in terminology is whenever you record an order in Materio, that actually creates a bill in QuickBooks. And so a bill, that is in QuickBooks, that's something, that's money that is owed. It increases your accounts payable. And so what satisfies that is when you record that you've paid that order in Materio, that creates a bill payment in QuickBooks, which satisfies that QuickBooks bill. And the part that makes it really easy for your accountant or yourself, if you're doing your books, is when you sync over that was paid, that order that you placed in Materio was paid, it matches that bill payment in QuickBooks to your bank feed. And when you're going through your bank transaction feed, there'll be this little green button on the transaction that says match. And so all you have to do is hit match and everything is coded. There's no further work needed. So that's the good thing about using Materio as the source of truth for your orders, is that once you've entered it in Materio, you don't have to go into QuickBooks and figure out which project it was for and which category to put it in. We've already taken care of that in Materio. And when you record an expense, like one of those billable expenses or reimbursable expenses in Materio, that syncs over directly to QuickBooks as an expense. And one of the common sync errors is that the payment isn't selected whenever you are recording a payment that you paid in order in QuickBooks or in Materio. And if when you're recording the payment, it's important to remember to click that little drop down of the source, the payment source, and choose whichever bank account or credit card that you use so that it will match up to the bank feed whenever you are reviewing your bank transactions in QuickBooks. And then another thing is that we see sometimes that something is edited directly in QuickBooks, and that will cut off the sync. It's a one-way sync from Materio to QuickBooks. So if something's edited in QuickBooks, the system will recognize that something doesn't match up and that we're not going to be syncing that information over anymore, because we assume that something was done intentionally in QuickBooks. So that can be something to avoid. If you need to make any changes to an order or payment or anything like that, it's important to remember to make that change directly in Materio so that it does flow downstream. And one other really neat benefit of recording everything in Materio is that the receipts that you attach, or any documents that you attach to orders or expenses or these or the payments that you make, is that they'll sync over as well as an attachment on that document in QuickBooks. So if your accountant or your bookkeeper is going through something and they need to see the backup or the official document and you've uploaded that in Materio, they don't have to go to Materio. They can just see that document as an attachment in QuickBooks. So I know that was a lot really quick. So I'll kind of try to summarize it here at the end. It's just really important to track everything in Materio. Track your orders. Orders are for things that are forecasted in the scope of work. They are tied directly to those items. They relate to your cost. Um, you want to record any pricing fluctuations. So if you originally thought that something was going to be $1,000 and it was $1,200, it's important that you record that as the actual cost whenever you're entering the order or expense. That way, at the end of the project, your estimate versus actuals is accurate. You also should utilize the notes and statuses on orders in Materio. So whenever you change a status or set a status in Materio, you have the option to add a note there, and that can be really useful to communicate with the team some additional context that's not present in the order at the moment. Um, Another thing that we get questioned a lot about is that sometimes you want to put a payment date in the past. Maybe you're at the end of the week and you're adding all your orders on a Friday afternoon, and you're not able to set the payment date to Monday. And this is a really easy fix. All you have to do is change the bill date to the actual date of the bill, it's because it will default to today's date. So the logic there is that the payment can't happen before the bill. So whenever you're inputting an order, always make sure that you're putting in the actual order date and make sure that you put in the date that it was paid. Otherwise, QuickBooks will do some funky stuff and your accountant might send you a little nasty gram about why some accounts are looking a little funky. And then expenses, those are for unplanned things. Use those for incidentals, billable expenses, reimbursable expenses. And then one thing that we see a lot of people do that makes them save a lot of time and headaches are to build standard operating procedures. Those SOPs will be super handy, and they are a playbook to repeat good practices and build those habits so that you don't have to search for documents or try to like recreate things that happened in the past. And then the last thing I'll say is that it's really a good idea to write contingencies into your contracts. And you can do that. You can have those contracts built and sent out of Materio. Make sure that you allow for this wording to say that like a final invoice will contain any pricing discrepancies or fluctuations. And so you leave yourself a way out that if prices do fluctuate, you can pass those pricing fluctuations on to the client and not have to burden those costs. So now that we've gone over all the information, I'm going to show you really quickly how to track and order in Materio. So here we have our interface, and I'm in the orders section. So whenever something is selected in Materio, and our selections are right here, we can see that we have a bunch of confirmed items. I can see by here, I've got this tile view. I can switch it to grid view, and this is going to give me a little bit easier way to scroll through and see the statuses of everything. I've got some things on here that are selected but not ordered. So I probably need to go and place these orders. So I can go over to my orders area. I've got my auto drafted POs here. The system has recognized that they've been selected. I just need to click on these. If I need to submit this to a vendor, I want to make sure I fill out where I want this sent to. I can choose the project address, my office, my warehouse. Maybe I want to just go ahead and send this to the warehouse because the site isn't ready for this to be delivered. I want to, if I need to add any instructions to the vendor, I can add those here. Any custom materials sheets, I can add those as an attachment here. And once I am ready to send, I can preview the email. I can enter the ordering email here. So I'm just going to enter orders at Materio.co. And then I can also add any message that I want to add in the email to the vendor. I can choose to display the pricing here. I can preview what that's going to look like, and I can send the email. So the vendor is going to get an email that's going to have a PDF of a formal purchase order. It's going to also have a quote. If I've uploaded a quote to the item, it's going to include that, any additional information that I attached in that screen. If I've already placed the order online, I can check this. I already have the bill of receipt. I want to upload that. So I'm just going to add a PDF here. What's going to happen next is it's going to ask me to confirm that the pricing on the receipt matches the pricing that I had estimated. If that is correct, I'm going to choose to confirm it. If not, I want to edit this. This is an editable field. Once I confirm that, I can hit save. If I've already paid this, and if I place the order online and I've already paid it, I can choose the payment method. And this is what I was talking about earlier. We want to make sure that we use the proper payment source here. I can attach any other documents to this. I'm going to hit done. And when I hit save, this is going to ask me if I want to update the status of this component to ordered. And in this case, yes, I do. If I wanted to add any additional stuff here, I could. I'm going to say ship to warehouse. And I can hit save. And now that has been ordered. So I've sent an order and I placed an order online. Again, I can see the status of those in my selections area in this grid view. And any notes that I left are going to show up here. If I have tracking information, that's going to show up here as well. And to enter tracking information, you can just go to any order. I'm just going to pick this one. I can choose to add a shipment here. And from here, I can enter the carrier information, the tracking number, the ship date, the anticipated delivery date. And if I have more than one item, I can choose which items are on this shipment. And then I'm going to toggle whether it's shipped or not. And then once I save that, that's going to ask me if I want to update the status of this component. I'm going to hit save. And now that has been updated. I'm going to show very quickly how to record an expense. So here is my finance area. I'm going to go to expenses. All my purchase orders are listed here at the top, and my expenses are down here at the bottom. I'm going to hit new expense, and I'm going to say that these are belt coasters for the furniture. And I'm going to say that I paid this out of my credit card. And here I can pick whichever vendor I purchased the item from. And then I'm going to tie this either to a category or directly to an item, or I can tie it directly to a component. So for this one, I'm going to tie it to the dining table. And I'm going to input however much money that it cost me. So I'm going to say that this was $18.99. If I had to pay tax, I want to include that here. So I'm going to do 1.89 and hit save. So I now have an expense saved. You'll notice that this is syncing to QuickBooks. It is now synced to QuickBooks. I have a link directly to QuickBooks here. And the last thing I'll show you is how to do a return. So if something was canceled or changed and you need to adjust that. So I'm going to go to my orders area, and let's say that where's one here that I want to do. Let's do the the stove. So let's say that this stove needs to be returned. What I'm going to do is go to this item itself. I'm going to change the price of this from its current to 0. by going to revise and proceed. And then down here at the bottom, I'm going to zero this out, save product. I just want to update this item only. I do not want to update my library. This will updating your library will cause it to be saved at $0 for future projects. So now I have a $0 item in there, and I want to double check to make sure that I have invoiced for that stove. So it doesn't look like I have. Let me see here. I've got this dishwasher here. Maybe I'll do this one instead. So I'm going to revise this one to $0. This is $710.99 and update this item only. And I can also update the status here. So I'm going to say that this is complete and returned on 9/12, credit issued. And I'm going to update this. Now I can publish a credit. If I've received funds back for the return of that item, I can add credit items, project scope, and here's that dishwasher that I zeroed out. It's saying since I've already invoiced the client that I owe them $853.19, I'm going to add that to this project as a credit. I'm going to publish it. And then now I publish this credit, and any new invoice I use in the future, I can use that as payment. The last thing I need to do is record that I received a refund for the return of that stove. So I'm going to check this box that is a refund. I'm going to call this the stove refund, and I'm going to optionally put the vendor here. I want to make sure that I put the receipt on here. Then I'm going to make sure I tie it to the dishwasher. I forgot that that was the dishwasher. And it was $710.99 and save. And so now I've recorded that I've had a refund for the dishwasher. I have also issued a credit for the dishwasher. And now when I go and create a new invoice, I'm going to create a quick invoice here. I'm just going to grab all these items. And so I now can use retainer or credit. And I've got that 932 from the dishwasher that I can use as payment whenever I'm creating an invoice. And I can see that that credit has been applied right here. And that is reducing the balance due from the total to a new balance due. And I can send that, and they'll get an invoice that lets them know that a credit has been applied. So that was a really quick rundown of everything from ordering and recording expenses, payments on orders, and how to do refunds. So one question here is do expenses all have to be created manually, or can CC transactions be uploaded to click through and accept the needed expenses and add info accordingly? So right now, expenses do have to be added as individual items. So in the expenses area, if you have a bunch of expenses, you would need to add those each. I would recommend, instead of tracking them in a CSV or an export from your credit card company, that you track them as you go as expenses. More than likely, they probably need to go over here in the order area. And so the difficulty with doing like a mass upload in that case is that these need to be tied to an item, and the scope of work has to be selected. So I think that's a great idea that we could potentially integrate in a future iteration. But at the current status of Materio, you will need to add individual orders and expenses each as they happen. You can export all the orders and expenses using one of these exporters. So this little down arrow here or in the expenses area, there is a download CSV, and that download is same as here. There's a download CSV. One last thing I will share is that you can export the status of all of your FF&E by doing a print selections, or you can export the selection sheet, and that will also show you the status of the orders. There's another question in the chat about a CSV upload wouldn't work unless every single transaction matches a category. Well, right now we just don't have a CSV ingestion mechanism. So there is not the ability to upload a CSV. Each transaction needs to be added as an expense or as an order. All right, we are 8 minutes over time, so I apologize for taking more of your time than originally anticipated. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them either via email, cale@materio.co. You can chat us. If you ever have any questions, you can use this little help button and hit ask a question. That'll go to a member of the team who will answer in a few minutes during business hours. You can also set up a time with me. I'll send a recap of the recording. It'll have my information on it. And I appreciate everybody for showing up today, and hopefully took something away. Would love to hear any feedback, any questions, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon. All right. Everybody has a great rest of their day, and I'll talk to you later.